It'll be a 36-yard attempt, and the crowd will tell you. It's perfect. 7:20 in overtime. A 26-yard, make it a 36-yard field goal by Ray Wersching.
May 14th, 1998, a Wednesday morning in Youngstown, Ohio. Federal agents surrounded the office building of one of the most powerful men in American sports. Inside, Eddie DeBartolo Jr. sat behind his mahogany desk, surrounded by Super Bowl trophies, photos with presidents, and framed magazine covers declaring him the greatest owner in NFL history. He'd built the San Francisco 49ers into a dynasty. 4 Super Bowl championships, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Bill Walsh, an empire worth billions. But on this morning, everything was about to collapse, because the FBI had evidence, wiretaps, bank records, testimony from a Louisiana governor, and a $400,000 bribe that would end it all. This is the story of how the man who built the greatest dynasty in NFL history became a federal criminal. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this is the story of how a $400,000 bribe destroyed the greatest dynasty in NFL history. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was born March 26, 1946, into one of America's wealthiest families. His father, Edward DeBartolo Sr., had built a shopping mall empire worth over $1 billion. The DeBartolo Corporation owned hundreds of malls across the United States. Eddie grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, surrounded by wealth, power, and the expectation that he would continue the family legacy. But Eddie didn't want malls. He wanted football. In 1977, at age 31, Eddie convinced his father to buy the San Francisco 49ers for $13 million. The team was terrible. They'd gone 2-14 the previous season. Attendance was low. The franchise was considered a joke, but Eddie saw potential. And more importantly, he saw a way to build something his father never could, a sports dynasty. The first few years were disasters. The 49ers kept losing and fans stayed away. The media criticized Eddie as a rich kid playing with daddy's money. But in 1979, everything changed. Eddie hired Bill Walsh as head coach. Walsh was a genius offensive mind who'd been overlooked by other teams. Eddie gave him complete control. Walsh drafted Joe Montana in the 3rd round of the 1980 draft. Nobody expected Montana to be special. He was too slow, too weak-armed, critics said. But Walsh saw something different. And Eddie trusted Walsh completely. That trust would define the dynasty. Because Eddie didn't just own the 49ers. He lived with them. He watched every practice. He went to every game. He sat with players in the locker room. He paid them the highest salaries, built them the best facilities, and did something no other owner had done. He loved his team like family. In 1981, the 49ers won their first Super Bowl, 26-21 against Cincinnati. Eddie cried on the field and hugged Montana. When he lifted the Lombardi Trophy, tens of thousands of fans screamed, and Eddie knew this was just the beginning. In 1984, a second Super Bowl, 38-16 against Miami. In 1988, a third, 20-16 against Cincinnati again. In 1989, a fourth, 55-10 against Denver. 4 Super Bowls in 10 years, the most dominant dynasty in NFL history. Eddie was at the center of everything. He gave players Rolex watches, threw championship dinners, and wrote bonus checks. Everyone called him Eddie D and loved him, but behind the scenes, Eddie was doing something else. He was gambling and building political connections. Governors, senators, mayors. The DeBartolo family wasn't just in football. Construction, real estate, casino licenses. And in that world, you needed connections to survive. Eddie knew that, and he was willing to buy them. In 1994, Eddie DeBartolo's life was at its peak. The 49ers had won another Super Bowl. Steve Young had replaced Montana, and the team was still dominating. But something else had caught Eddie's attention: casino licenses in Louisiana. the state of Louisiana was legalizing the gambling industry, and casino licenses were worth billions of dollars. The DeBartolo Corporation wanted one of those licenses, but there was a problem. Licenses were limited and competition was fierce. Eddie needed an advantage. And he found that advantage in Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards. Edwards was a controversial politician. He'd been elected governor 3 times. He was famous for gambling and women. He'd once said, "The only way I can lose is if I'm caught in bed with a dead girl or a live boy." He was blunt, reckless, and buyable. But what Eddie didn't know was that Edwards was already under FBI surveillance. For years, federal agents had suspected Edwards of corruption. Phone lines were tapped. Bank accounts were monitored. The FBI was waiting for someone to try to buy Edwards. Eddie DeBartolo was walking into a trap. In early 1997, Eddie's lawyer and advisor arranged a secret meeting in Louisiana. Eddie wasn't there, but the message was clear. The DeBartolo Corporation wanted a casino license, and Edwards could help. In exchange, money, $400,000. Not directly, of course, through consultants, bank-to-bank transfers, shell companies. On paper, everything was legal, but in reality, it was a bribe. And the FBI was watching everything. Because Edwards had been on the FBI's radar for years. There were phone taps, bank records were being tracked. And the DeBartolo transaction fell right into the FBI's trap. In October 1997, the FBI made its move. Edwards was arrested, his office was raided, banks were shut down. And the investigation started expanding. Because Edwards was talking. And one of the things he said was Eddie DeBartolo's name. May 10th, 1998, Eddie DeBartolo woke up to a phone call in his Youngstown office. It was his lawyer. "The FBI is coming," he said. "Don't say anything." Eddie froze. He'd known for years this moment could come, but when it actually happened, he wasn't ready. An hour later, federal agents arrived at the office. They showed a search warrant. Files, computers, bank records, everything was collected. Eddie watched silently. They didn't arrest him that day. But the message was clear, he was under investigation. And it wasn't just the FBI, the NFL knew too. And NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue did something that destroyed Eddie. He suspended DeBartolo from the 49ers. He couldn't run the team's daily operations. He couldn't talk to coaches. He couldn't attend draft meetings. His sister Denise DeBartolo York took over temporary control. But everyone knew Eddie was finished. The media went crazy. Headlines screamed, "NFL's most powerful man falls." ESPN ran constant coverage. 49 ERS fans were in shock. Eddie wasn't just an owner, he was a hero. He'd brought 4 Super Bowls, Montana, Rice, and Walsh, and now he was a federal criminal? The locker room was devastated, Jerry Rice called him. Steve Young released a statement supporting him. But players worried about the team's future, and Eddie couldn't be with his team. He was banned from the family he'd built. The trial process began. In summer 1998, Eddie testified before a federal grand jury. 5 hours of questions about bank records, phone calls, his relationship with Edwards, and the $400,000. Eddie denied everything at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Wire transfers, recorded conversations, his own advisor's testimony. Eddie could fight it in court and risk years in prison or make a deal. It wasn't really a choice. October 1998. Eddie DeBartolo made a deal with his lawyers. The federal prosecution was being lenient because they wanted a bigger fish, Edwards. Eddie would testify, and in exchange, he'd get a lighter sentence. The deal was this. Eddie would plead guilty to making a payment under extortion. Edwards had forced him, threatened him. Technically not bribery, but still a federal crime. The penalty? A $1 million fine, 2 years probation, and the most painful, an indefinite ban from the NFL. The NFL acted immediately. Commissioner Tagliabue made a statement. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. has admitted to committing a federal crime. This is contrary to NFL values. He can no longer be the owner of the San Francisco 49ers. Eddie held a press conference. He cried, "I'm sorry. he said. I disappointed my family. I disappointed the fans. But I didn't bribe anyone for a casino license. Edwards forced me. But nobody believed it. Because Eddie DeBartolo was a billionaire, nobody could force a billionaire. The truth was, Eddie had played the system, got caught, and now he was paying the price. In 1999, Eddie DeBartolo officially resigned from 49ers ownership. Control of the team passed to his sister Denise and her husband John York. Eddie made a statement, "The 49ers will always be in my heart, but I can no longer serve this team. My family will continue." But everyone knew this was the end. Without Eddie, the 49ers wouldn't be the same, and they weren't. Under York's management, the team fell. Drafts were poorly managed, coaches were fired, players left. In the 2000s, the 49ers became a mediocre team. Some seasons they made the playoffs, but they never got close to the Super Bowl. The dynasty was over. The York era was a disaster from the start. In 2000, coach Steve Mariucci was fired despite taking the team to 2 NFC championships. Players were shocked. Eddie would never have done this, they said. In 2002, the 49ers drafted quarterback Giovanni Carmazzi instead of Tom Brady. Carmazzi never played a single NFL down. Brady won 6 Super Bowls. In 2003, Jeff Garcia, the Pro Bowl quarterback, was released. He went to other teams and kept winning. The 49ers kept losing. Draft after draft failed. Free agency signings collapsed. Coaches came and went. From 2000 to 2010, the 49ers had 7 different head coaches. 7. Eddie had only had 2 in 19 years. The stability was gone, the culture was gone, and most painfully, the winning was gone. Fans missed Eddie desperately. Bring Back Eddie D t-shirts were sold at games. Protests were organized outside Candlestick Park. Former players spoke out publicly. Jerry Rice said in an interview, "The 49ers died when Eddie left. The York family doesn't understand what Eddie built. It wasn't just about money. It was about family." Joe Montana refused to attend 49ers games for years. "It's not the same team," he said. "Eddie made us believe we were special. Now we're just a business." The pain was real. The dynasty was dead. But the NFL was firm. Eddie DeBartolo would never be an NFL owner again. The ban was permanent, and the 49ers would have to find their way without him. The Edwards trial began in 2000. Eddie testified for hours, describing meetings, transfers, and threats. The courtroom was packed. Eddie wore a dark suit and looked exhausted. When asked if he knew the payment was illegal, Eddie said he thought it was a consulting fee. Edwards' defense attorney challenged him, "So you bribed a governor and thought it was legal?" Eddie looked down. "I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong people." It was humiliating. Edwards was found guilty on 17 charges and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Eddie, meanwhile, completed his probation, paid his fine, and returned to Youngstown. He ran the DeBartolo Corporation. He opened shopping malls, but he stayed away from football. Because the NFL didn't want him. In 2004, Eddie did something. After completing probation, he asked the NFL for forgiveness. "I served my time," he said. "I'm sorry, I don't want to own again, I just want to go to games." The NFL considered it. Tagliabue had retired. New commissioner Roger Goodell seemed more flexible. And in 2006, the NFL made a decision. Eddie DeBartolo was forgiven. He could attend NFL events, he could go to games, but he could never own a team. Eddie accepted with tears. "Thank you," he said. "The 49ers will always be my family." Today, in 2025, Eddie DeBartolo is 79 years old. He still lives in Youngstown. He runs the DeBartolo Corporation. He occasionally goes to 49ers games. When fans see him, they give him standing ovations. Because Eddie is still a hero. The man who brought 4 Super Bowls. Montana's owner. Rice's owner. Walsh's owner. But Eddie's legacy is complicated. In 2010, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the owner category. In his speech, he cried, "I have regrets," he said, I made mistakes, but I always loved the 49ers. I always loved the players, and I never forgot the fans. The Hall of Fame ceremony was emotional. Montana, Rice, and Young were all there. Montana spoke, "Eddie treated us like sons. He gave us everything we needed to win. He made mistakes, but he loved this game more than anyone." Rice was crying. "Eddie believed in me when nobody else did. I wouldn't be here without him." The crowd gave a 5-minute standing ovation. Eddie stood at the podium in tears, surrounded by the champions he'd made. It was redemption and tragedy combined. But everyone knew Eddie's story was tragic because he had everything, and he lost it all because of one deal. After the ceremony, Eddie sat alone in his hotel room. The Hall of Fame trophy was on the table, the bust with his face on it. But all he could think about was Candlestick Park, the roar of the crowd, the feeling of holding the Lombardi trophy. Watching Montana throw touchdown passes, the joy of championships. All of it was gone, replaced by courtrooms, probation officers, and federal fines. Eddie had spent his entire life building something beautiful, a dynasty, a family, a legacy. And in one moment, because of one deal with one corrupt governor, he destroyed it all. The $400,000 seemed like nothing when he made the deal. Now it had cost him everything. The Louisiana casino license never happened. The DeBartolo Corporation didn't get the license. Edwards went to prison. Eddie lost the 49ers. And the $400,000? That money cost an empire. Some say Eddie was a victim. Edwards forced him, the FBI targeted him, the NFL sacrificed him. Some say Eddie was guilty. He bribed, he lied, he got caught. Both are partly true. But the result doesn't change. Eddie DeBartolo started as one of the most successful owners in NFL history and ended as a federal criminal. The dynasty didn't die on the field, it died in court. And the 49ers were never the same again, because without Eddie, the team was just a team. With him, it had been a family. Eddie DeBartolo owned the 49ers for 19 years. He won 4 Super Bowls. He won 13 playoff games. Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, Ronnie Lott, all brought by Eddie. But one federal crime destroyed everything. A $400,000 bribe cost $1 billion empire. And maybe the most painful thing is this: all Eddie wanted to do was win. His father had won with shopping malls. Eddie wanted to win with football, and he won. But that victory became a curse, because to win, he did everything. He paid players the most money. He hired the best coaches. And to work the system, he took shortcuts. He made a deal with a governor in Louisiana for a casino license, and the FBI saw that deal. So was Eddie DeBartolo a genius, or did he destroy his own team? Both. On the field, he was a genius. He created a dynasty. He hired the best coaches. He signed the best players. He loved the game and loved his team. But off the field, he took risks that no owner should take. He gambled. He made deals with corrupt politicians. He cut corners. He thought he could buy his way through any problem, and when he got caught, everything collapsed. The $400,000 wasn't just a bribe, it was a test of character, a test of values. A test of who Eddie DeBartolo really was. And Eddie failed that test. He chose the shortcut. He chose the deal over doing things the right way, and he lost everything because of it. The 49ers dynasty didn't end because the team got old. It didn't end because other teams got better. It ended because the owner who built it made one terrible decision. And that decision cost him his team, his reputation, and his legacy. Everything he'd worked for, gone. Today he's just a memory, one of the greatest owners in NFL history, and a federal criminal. He has a bust in the Hall of Fame, but he's not the owner of the 49ers. Because $400,000 cost him everything. And maybe the lesson is this: winning isn't everything. How you win matters. Integrity matters. Character matters. Eddie DeBartolo wanted to win at all costs. And in the end, he lost everything. Some mistakes you can't come back from. Some decisions change everything. For Eddie DeBartolo, one deal in Louisiana changed his entire life, from the most powerful man in football to a convicted felon, from dynasty builder to cautionary tale. That's the price of $400,000.